Hi, I'm Miles Bailey, the Church Treasurer, and I thank you for continuing to entrust me with that role here at All Saints. And I think we all have a duty, if we are committed members of All Saints, the fellowship, to just keep ourselves informed of the church finances, what's happened in the past, and where we're going in the future. So that's what this video you're about to watch is for, this presentation. Please take the time to watch it, it's not long. There are no bullet points, and there's even a joke.
So this is my chance to talk about what happened last year and what is happening this year in All Saints finances. And you should be able to find a summarised report like this on the website. I'm just going to talk through in the next few minutes through a few highlights and maybe try to bring us a little bit up to date since the end of the year. So these are my headings, and don't worry, I am going to go through these fairly briskly. Where did the money go in 2019? Where will it go in 2020? Our income, just briefly on our funds as they were at the 31st of December, and how are we doing so far in 2020. So let's go. Where did the money go in 2019? I think it's useful to actually focus on the spending side first, as I think that gives us good context to think about the income, which I'm sure many of us already know comes from us, our collective giving. So let's talk about that. This table comes out of the report, yellow bars 2019, which we'll focus on. The figures here are in thousands, gives you the main headings for where the money went. So we're going to have a quick canter through these. The top part of our table here is our staffing, £163,000. That includes ministry share, which completely covers Simon's stipend and accommodation as our rector, but also is a contribution to the diocese and the wider Church of England and its infrastructure. So we had 4 ministry staff last year. We had Christopher up until August, and Monica joined us in January last year. And made a great contribution from the start and continues to do so. I think this is also my chance to praise our administrator, Alison, that we pay for. Some of you may not have much interaction with her. She obviously works behind the scenes, but as treasurer, I have plenty of dealings with her, and I've got nothing but praise and thanks for all that she does in terms of keeping things running and helping with the administration of the church finances. Missionary and charitable giving, largely our giving through the External Mission Fund. We peg that to 20% of our pledged income, so it's very important that we know what people are pledging, because that's how we determine it. And we are blessed with a lot of resources and a lot of income, and it is great that we can pay out some of that to support individuals, organisations, as part of God's kingdom, doing work in all around the world and in this country. Moving on, this is, I suppose, what you might call the running costs, or sort of the infrastructure, some of the more mundane stuff, but absolutely vital stuff of running the church, keeping the lights on, and keeping things insured, maintained, and it was a hefty number last year, 53,000, because we had this 28,000 that we spent on the church quinquennial repairs. So quinquennial, every 5 years. We had a report a few years ago. It's taken us a bit of time to turn that into a tender for the work that we wanted to do, and eventually we had that done last year. And we have an old building, and unfortunately it is going to require these costs from time to time. We did get some grants to help us with that, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. And I've just listed there some of the many other things that comes into this pot. And then we come to what we're labelling ministry expenses, I suppose the more direct costs of doing ministry with people, of running groups and services, hiring the village hall, also the newsletter that goes out and is a witness in itself. And I think it's interesting. It's quite a small number in financial terms, but I think it's a big cost in terms of time. This is where people volunteering their time to work with the children on a Sunday morning or run these other groups, get involved doing the music and services is so vital. So let's not forget that expenditure does not measure value in the God's kingdom and what it's achieving. So that brings us to a grand total of £273,000, quite a lot more than the previous year, mainly because of that building work that I mentioned, which was unusual. Where will the money go in 2020? It's time to talk about the budget. So here's that previous picture that we've just seen, and now let's overlay on that some budget figures for comparison to see what this year is going to look like. So going back to the top there, that's staffing levels, pretty similar to last year. The situation we've got this time is that we're gaining a curate in July. So as last year we had a curate for part of the year, broadly speaking, we've got a curate for half the year. Edward Keane, for those of you who don't know, who will be joining us soon. So it's another low year in that sense, but obviously future years are going to be more costly because we'll be running a full complement of staff. And I think it's worth underlining that although this is a large amount, that we do need our staff, we do value our staff and all that they contribute, and they do truly keep the show on the road. And even in these times where we're not seeing them face to face in quite the same way, they are getting on with keeping the church running, making sure those services happen or those videos happen on a Sunday, and lots of pastoral support. Some of you will be aware of some of the other Zoom meetings and things that they do, but pastoral at a one-to-one level as well. And we do have staff who work for free and they don't appear here, but supporting what goes on in the church. The missions figure that I talked about earlier, similar to last year, based on this 20% of pledge giving. This is why it's so important to know what people are pledging in terms of regular income, because then we can plan for how much we're going to give it in this category. Those general running costs back to a sort of a more normal level because we haven't got any major building work going on this year. And then the ministry costs, pretty much the same. The one big difference is the church weekend away. We subsidise that, so individual contributions don't cover all the costs. So we budget a small amount, 3,000 there for that, and then otherwise it's probably much in the rounding as anything, but broadly similar to last year. So that gives us a total for this year of £245,000 that we're looking to spend. Okay, well, we're well over halfway through. It's time for that joke. So the treasurer and the church warden are on the phone. Have you seen the latest expense claim from the vicar? He says. I know, she says. He bought a Mercedes, a BMW, and 2 Datsuns. What was he thinking? Hang on. Surely it couldn't be. What? He's got coronavirus. Well, moving swiftly on. Before I talk about our income, I've just put down at the bottom of the screen there our expenditure that we've just been talking about. We've got the 245,000 for the this year's budget that we want to compare to. So we'll come back to that in a moment, but that's our yardstick, if you like. Okay, where's the money coming from? If we look back to the previous couple of years, 2018, 2019, we've got this main block of where we get our income from is regular giving, which was pretty stable, about £197,000 in both those years, including the gift aid that we reclaim. We've got other income that includes things like parish fees, a bit of investment income, and various other bits and pieces. And in 2019, it's quite a bit bigger because it includes nearly £5,000 in grants and a VAT reclaim that was all around the building work that I talked about earlier. So it was a bit of a one-off. We do get one-off giving that comes through the year. You can see it's quite chunky, and we got some of that last year. And then gift day is that final item, and obviously a significant amount, £26,000 last year. Okay, so we've got the total figures pretty similar for the 2 years: 247,000, 248,000. Let's add in this year in terms of budget. It's 210,000. We're only budgeting really for that regular giving that people have indicated they're going to give, a little bit of other income that we can expect, and pretty much nothing else. And we don't budget for the gift day. So we've got currently 77 active donors. So 205,000 including gift aid in regular giving. That works out at about £220 each per month, and I think it's just worth taking a moment to once again appreciate, God's great provision to us as individuals, that we can make those kind of contributions, and for those 77 households that are represented there that are using that money to invest in each other really, and in God's kingdom. So I've popped the expenditure down that we saw earlier down there for comparison. £245,000 budget for this year, and fairly clearly, as you can see, we've got a deficit that we are budgeting to spend more than our income, a deficit of £35,000, and that just points up how important gift days are. If we can generate some income from those, and as gifts of 20,000 or more make a big difference in working on that deficit and reducing that deficit. If I just talk about our funds at the end of the year, just briefly to sort of give some context of deficit, we ended 2019 with £100,000. And so we go into the year with that amount and can use that to support this deficit and use up some of that, which I think is the right thing to do. We're not here to sit on these resources that we've been provided, but to make use of them. We're going to need those going into the future when we have our full complement of staff, and there's inevitably going to be further calls on funds for building work. As I said before, we have an old building that we need to support and maintain. So how are we actually doing in 2020? Well, like they used to have in the films, I've got my spinning headlines. Basically, good news so far, but we are definitely taking nothing for granted. But I reckon you've seen enough graphs, so to talk about those more and to finish off my presentation, I'm going to ditch the slides.
On the good news, the picture financially so far this year is thankfully looking strong. We've had a few one-off gifts already, and that's really helped to push income around about £6,000 ahead of budget, which is fantastic. We had the weekend away in March, and that came in under budget, and that greatly helped. We had over £1,200 of extra voluntary contributions, so we're really grateful for those. And as I say, that helped push things in the right direction. And as we operate as an online church in the current circumstances, we are saving some costs at the moment. No village hall hire. We're not sending out a monthly newsletter. Little photocopying. We're not feeding TNGers, we're not providing coffee, and a few other things, and they all add up. But seeing where we are at the moment, probably about £8,000 better off than budget at the moment, there's no complacency on my part. We're aware that the world, this country, is in a major economic downturn. And although we've got a good online presence, which I think is serving our established members, that raises the questions about what about new members and those on the margins? Are we drawing those in? Are we attracting new people? Occasionally someone leaves, so are we sort of renewing ourselves as a congregation? And that means that, as ever, income is not guaranteed. It has the potential to go up and certainly has the potential to go down. And I guess my biggest concern would be gift day that we would plan to have later in the year as usual, that might not deliver the kind of blessing and generous giving that's been possible in the past, and that will make things a little bit harder for us. So definitely as a PCC we're alert to this, and we will go on watching, we will go on listening to you, and we will go on praying about this situation and praying about the finances. And as we've always done, we will be trusting God to shape his church and to provide the resources that he wants to provide for that in the years ahead. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that was helpful. I always appreciate any questions or comments. You can send them to me by email, it's probably the easiest way. treasurer@allsaintslittleshelford.org. Please email me, and otherwise, thank you for watching.